Why are we still talking about the Great Resignation, and what is the belonging tax? Today, we'll be talking about that on Culture Builder Live. Hey, I am Chris Wink, the CEO and co-founder of Technically, the news organization that has a community of technology professionals. Today, we're going to be talking about belonging tax, why the Great Resignation is still a thing, because it is. And we're going to be looking at a new report from BetterUp, the virtual coaching platform. I am joined to talk about this with Erin Eutaugh. She is the manager of behavioral science over at BetterUp. Erin, thank you for being here.
Hi, so glad to be here.
So good. So, Erin, I have tried so hard in this interview series to not use the phrase Great Resignation anymore because we use it so much this summer. But the quit rates are still high. We are still talking to entrepreneurs, hiring managers, HR folks, talking about this fear and crush. We're going to get into some data, but can you start with me, maybe the basics? Why are we still quitting? And what does BetterUp have to teach us about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question because one of the things that we looked at in our data is that people are actually doing better in hybrid work. So one of the things we explored was, how is well-being responding to this shift into hybrid work, remote work, and in fact, we're seeing a well-being benefit of organizations kind of embracing this and employees being able to have that flexibility and agency and more control over how they kind of manage their lives. So yeah, it is like, why are people still quitting? Well, we also, we're curious about this question, and one of the things we looked at was belonging, and what we saw was that kind of at the start of the pandemic, belonging shot up and actually was above average for a few months, which was great.
It's like that we have like a wartime relationship. There's that moment where you had togetherness. So that's so you guys you saw that in the data of a peak in togetherness. We're in this together moment, but that didn't last.
Exactly. It didn't last. It was short-lived. Belonging started to drop through the mid of the pandemic. And then in 2021, what we've seen since the start of this year is that despite having more mobility, despite some organizations having offices reopen and our ability to reconnect, of course, under the safety of vaccines, you'd think that we would see kind of a rebound in our belonging levels. But unfortunately and sadly, we're seeing just this tanking of it. And really interestingly, in April 2021, when there was that highest turnover rate in the century, that I think actually was when we kind of coined that term, the Great Resignation. Yeah. That's 1 month where belonging was at its like rock bottom levels from when we had started tracking. So that was really interesting. So to answer your question, I think part of it is that we are doing better, but there's a cost to this, diversification of work arrangements. And that cost comes in sense of community, sense of connection and belonging. And we need that as human beings. We need that as employees. And so I think that's a major part of why people are still, dissatisfied and leaving because they're not feeling that sense of connection and belonging in the ways that they're used to and the ways that they need.
The phrase you guys use in the report, the belonging tax, really resonated with me. If you look at the aggregated exit interview data that a handful of agencies and trade groups put out, roughly I keep seeing about a third of folks who have identified as being part of the Great Resignation put compensation. I'm just straight out think I can get a better deal on the market, and I'm leaving for that. And then a whole bunch of other things make up the other 2/3, but you could squint at it and call it company culture. There's our values aligned, or I left because I didn't think my company's values anymore identify with us. But, flexibility is still, 1 in 4 of many of those folks who identify as Great Resignation. Hey, my company's making me go back in the office way more than I want to, or it's being overly restrictive in some other way. But they do basket around culture. I had a friend push me on thinking even that third of folks who said I'm leaving for comp could be seen as a workplace culture problem too, because as this friend put it to me, we're trading money for time, and the more connected I see I am with this place, that has a benefit for me. And if I feel less connected, I'm going to demand a higher premium on my time. And so his push was like, that in itself could be a sense that maybe even some of those comp folks were just saying, well, I don't feel that connected, so yeah, I'm demanding higher comp. Is that something that resonate with you in your research about how that is, part of a compensation package in some sense, could be a sense of belonging?
Yeah, I really like that. I really like that kind of depth of thought about it because, yeah, I think, the opportunity cost, I think, has risen for people. Like, there's been this great rethinking as well of like, what do I want to do with my life and my time? And, the pandemic was a great reset, of course, and really made us all look at our lives in somewhat of a different way, really understand our own values and desires. And so I think that's totally right that like now the opportunity cost for like every hour we spend, working, is it worth it? Are we getting what we need? Is it, commensurate with the cost that we have to our lives? I think that is definitely part of it. And also kind of along that line, I think that the general employee-employer contract has kind of shifted. And this has been, this is not something new. I think it's been evolving and developing for decades. So you think back to early 1900s or even mid-century, we were more sort of willing to accept like that we just exchange our time for money and that's it. Like we're happy with that. And then, as time went on, we expect more and more from our organization, benefits and being taken care of more. And now with the pandemic having happened, I think that was also a great accelerant towards this evolved state of what we as employees expect out of our organizations and employers. We want to feel that we have a purpose, that we're creating value to the world, that there's meaning in our work, that we have a sense of community in our organization. Our workplace is now kind of this portal to social relationships, to sense of togetherness and belonging and community. And so it's sort of like upped the ante in terms of like, I don't just want to work for money. I want to work and I want an opportunity to grow, develop, self-actualize, feel belonging, feel connection, all of these things wrapped up in one. And so I think that's part of it too.
The steady march of ancillary, even important, but benefits beyond time for money seemed like an important concept. I'm willing to show enough of my political belief that I think it is insane that health insurance is tied to an employer, but that attachment first comes to us post World War II in a competition for talent that employers began offering health insurance or deferring costs of health insurance and the like as a means for attracting talent. I do wonder whether we want our relationship with our employers to be tied up with so much of our life. I think I have some worry about that being a trap that we may not realize we're walking into, because obviously at some point employers prefer to trade these aggregated goodies rather than raw dollars, because logically they're lower cost. There's a reason why there's motivation at the organizational leadership level to say this stuff is net benefit for us to offer rather than just straight cash, homie. So I guess a way to back into this is the belonging tax you guys talk about, and we will drop the link to the BetterUp annual report in below the video and in the Technically article, so you can dive in deeper. But I at least want to break out like the goodies stuff, which I don't know if I think we want that. It seems like an endless arms race of what goodies we want to add, and I'm not sure if we want our employer to have to. I don't know if we want all that with our employer. But I separate that out with what you're hitting on with is a belonging sense of community is something different. Yes. It's an idea that at some point, marginal increase in your compensation don't make you happier. And so most people in and around tech, as much as I'm sure we all would like a salary bump, probably we all are doing reasonably well. And that increase is not going to be what's going to give us happiness as much as belonging or sense of community is. that seems part of what I view as like the belonging tax, that if you are not investing on giving a place to be, folks who have choice will end up eventually pursuing that. That fair? How much did that resonate with what you've seen in your research?
I think that's totally fair. And I think you're right to kind of disentangle like the goodies, as you say it, from these sort of like these in many ways intangible psychological need fulfillment type concepts around belonging, feeling included, and feeling like you're really connected and a part of something that's bigger than you, and so yeah, and I do think too there's also been research from BetterUp as well, and sort of like people are willing to give up money for belonging, and are willing to take. I think so. What you're saying is very much sort of the point of view I carry too. That money can only go so far, and so the organizations that really are going to be sort of the ones that recognize what's happening here and recognize that this need and this trend, these things of this belonging in the tank and the Great Resignation. These things are connected, they're tied together, and organizations that really, can grab that insight and make adjustments to their organization and build that inclusive culture. I think, my hypothesis is that they're going to be the ones that have that competitive advantage in the talent marketplace.
Let me just push there for a moment, because I'm sure there's a portion of our audience that goes, come on, man, like, what do you want your company to help you self-actualize? So like, are just our expectations wildly out of whack, and it's just impossible to expect this out of our employers, and we should just pull this all down?
My response, would be, look, it's a huge order. It's a tall order. It's not an easy thing to fulfill for people. But I do think that it is the reality. And I think that the organizations that can get it right and are going to get it right are going to be the ones that really have this massive advantage over the other organizations. And they're going to be the talent magnets, because that's what people really want. And also, Chris, I mean, just take a moment and think about, imagine a version of the world where we all are able to find work that really aligns with our identities and allows us to feel a sense of impact and value and meaning and purpose and community and connection, and pathways for self-actualizing. I mean, wouldn't that be amazing?
Well, so all right, so we're coming up on time. Then let me, okay, Erin, send us off with I'm an HR manager at a software firm, or I'm an entrepreneur of an early stage startup. And I'm like, this lady is telling me I got to help my employees self-actualize. Maybe just pull me out more generally in your like sense of belonging is a competitive advantage. Belonging is a contributor to understanding what retention looks like. What do I do now?
Let's come out of the clouds for a moment.
Sure. Yeah. Help me out, Erin.
All right. So we also did research on this. And so, please take a look at the report if you're interested. But one of the things that we looked at and we asked the question of our data was, how has what it means to build an inclusive culture and to foster that belonging and to provide these environments that are conducive to community and connection. What does it mean? How do we actually do that today? Is that different today than it was, in 2017, 2018, 2019, pre-pandemic times? And so we separated our data out from pre and post-pandemic and asked, how has it shifted? And what we found is that leaders who kind of embrace or have high skill in these 6 areas of inclusive leadership behavior, they are able to drive belonging on their teams in a disproportionate way than other leaders. And that those 6 behaviors haven't actually meaningfully shifted. Like, it's the same 6 behaviors that employees or that people leaders need to do that we've talked about for years. It's the same. So in some ways that's really good news. But what was really interesting is that the relative importance of the sort of the recipe of those things has shifted. And there's certain behaviors that are even more, disproportionately more important now than before. And those 3 things are alignment. So getting alignment on your teams and understanding how to build alignment, even in a geographically dispersed environment with, inequitable working arrangements. Some people in the office, maybe some not, et cetera. The other is empathy. Leading with empathy has become disproportionately more important, and building social connection inside of teams. And so, these are very concrete behaviors that leaders, people leaders in particular, can cultivate in themselves, can build. It's possible to build them. And when they do, there are outsized benefits on the people around them, the direct reports they work with, for belonging. So, one other just quick, interesting thing we found is that leaders who get it right, they're driving belonging to a degree of 26% more now than before the pandemic. So the importance of an inclusive leader is more important today than it was before. And so that was also a really interesting nugget of insight we had.
There's glimmers of Ben Horowitz's peacetime, wartime CEO and leader theme that's coming up there. Erin, that's fantastic. These concepts of inclusive leader, belonging tax, even your note on employee-employer contract, that'll end up in the Technically item. If you're not already subscribed to the Culture Builder newsletter, you should be. The full recap will run on Technically. Erin, thank you so much for being here. Our friends over at BetterUp. This has been this week's Culture Builder Live. We'll see you next week.